This is where we start to differ. The NFC West. The winners of the NFC West, the Los Angeles Rams, coming into the season, their projected win total was 8.5. They go over, going 10-7. You went under, I went over. So what did you get wrong about this team?
I was down on Stafford, and Stafford had an okay season, better than what I anticipated. And then their defense was better than I anticipated. Seems like they got some blue chipper guys on there now, like the guys they took, Jarrett Verse, Byron Young, another guy they drafted, I forget his name, but second round pick. But
who's sick?
Fisk, yes, Brendan Fisk, Fisk, Braden Fisk, yeah. So they got some good players on defense too, right? And somehow their cornerbacks are pretty solid. Like Akilla Witherspoon starting for them. I was like, damn, where did that guy go? And he was on the Rams. I was like, damn, he's making plays against us when we were playing them. I was like, he's still in the league. I didn't know that. So yeah, they just got decent. I think this Stafford played almost all the games. He didn't miss any games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Stafford was healthy. He missed one game. Stafford was pretty healthy.
The last game, I think he sat. I think he was healthy every other game.
Yeah. And then, obviously they struggled a little bit with Puka Nakao not being there at the beginning, but once he came on board, they just took off. So and I think they benefited from other teams not being as good in the NFC West. So like
your boys.
I don't know. Definitely from the Niners having the season from hell, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we will get there once we get to the bottom of the division. But yeah, they swept the division, I believe, and that was a difference. So they only got 4 wins outside of the division. They had a weird season, right? They started 1-4, but they bounced back. And what I liked about them was the coach-quarterback combination. I was like, okay, they're going to go over because I think that foundation is strong. I definitely didn't think Puka was only going to play 11 games or Cooper Kupp was only going to play 12, and some of them kind of overlapped. They overlapped for a few games there as well. I mean, Kyron Williams was incredible, 1,300 yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, I think another 3 receiving touchdowns. So he was incredible for them, really carried that offense during the stretch where the other guys were hurt. And that defense, it was okay. They ended up being 17th. The defense, that's pretty good, considering, of course, losing a Hall of Fame talent. And Jared Verse, that you mentioned, is probably going to be the Rookie of the Year. And they ended up winning the division at the 5th tiebreaker, which was crazy. So maybe they didn't sweep the Seattle. I don't remember. We'll look at the schedule, but they won it. Based on the 5th tiebreaker. It was strength of schedule or strength of victory that had them winning the division. So it was a real close call. Speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, the projected win total was 7.5. They go over. They go 10-7 and lose the division, of course, on that tiebreaker. You went over. I went under. So you were right. I was wrong. What did you get right about this team?
Yeah, I think we just flipped our thoughts on the teams, right? Like I was like, I think Geno Smith's going to be pretty good. I like their running game. JSN was a budding star in the making, and we saw this season he kind of comes into his own here. So I kind of liked that, and then I liked what they were doing on defense, and their defense was pretty decent, I think. So I think you kind of had the opposite thoughts, right? Like you were all gung ho on the Rams, but then you're like, no, Seattle, no, I'm out, right? So. Like you didn't like Geno Smith, I think, right? That was your thing. So you weren't a Geno Smith fan, and I knew Geno Smith would be fine. And man, he I mean, at least in the Niner games, he was using his legs. He was killing us on the ground. Like I've seen him do that. I was like, oh wow, I never seen Geno run so much. But apparently, even if you can't run, you can run against the Niners. Like that's apparently the thing here. So yeah, I think the offense was well. I'm surprised that they missed out here. I thought they were going to win the division. Just like you said. The Rams won it by like the 5th tiebreaker on the schedule, right? So
that's right, because they beat them in the last game, but it didn't matter. They beat the Rams in week 18, but it didn't matter at that point because of all the other factors. So again, it sucks when you win 10 games and you don't make the playoffs because of how deep the NFC was. So yeah, I thought the clock was going to strike midnight on Geno. I was like, this guy's going to turn back into a pumpkin. I shouldn't have doubted him. I shouldn't have made that mistake again. I also had doubts on McDonald being a impact head coach right away. I thought, all right, he's going to struggle. But you look at it, they have a ton of weapons on offense. So, okay, that was good enough. But ironically enough, they were 18th in offense and 11th in defense. So the defense was much better than I thought it was going to be. They also benefited from playing the Niners twice and sweeping them. So I'll take the L. It's okay. I was wrong. No big deal. All right, Arizona. The Arizona Cardinals projected win total is actually the same as Seattle, 7.5. We both went under, and they barely squeaked over. They got 8 wins, so they go 8-9, hit the over. What did we get wrong about this team?
We just didn't think the Niners would suck as much and the Cardinals would beat them twice. So that's really it. Yeah, I mean, we were both kind of down on the Cardinals.
You can just end the segment right there.
We can just stop there, right? That's what it is. We can just go talk about the Niners next. But I mean, we knew Kyler Murray was going to be hit or miss, and which he was. Defense was going to be up and down, which they were. The one surprising thing I would say is how bad Marvin Harrison Jr. played this season. Like people were expecting.
I disagree. I disagree.
I mean, I think he played. I mean, his stats were bad. I think he was running good routes. I think Kyler Murray was not seeing him. Like that's why it looks like he played bad. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to like get out of Arizona as soon as possible and not play with Kyler Murray, like so he can live up to his potential. I think Kyler Murray's limiting him. So I'll end it there.
He had 7 touchdowns. He had 860 yards, something like that. I'm typing it in as we talk here. 885 yards and 8 touchdowns. 60 catches. I mean, it's not terrible. We were both right. We both said that it would take him some time to build up that chemistry with Kyler, which we, ended up seeing. I think it's just he's a quarterback that's going to take some time to get used to, right? If you think about who the guys that Harrison played with, I forget who the quarterback at Ohio State was last year, but he had a couple years with C.J. Stroud, and that's a drop back pocket passer who's accurate, strong arm, all that stuff. Kyler is, of course, none of those things. He has a strong arm, but he's going to improvise. He's going to do his thing. And I think early on in the season, he made a comment like, "It's not my job to get him the ball." And I'm like, yeah, it is.
It is your job, Kyler. Yeah, well, I don't like Kyler. I don't like Kyler Murray. I don't know. Like if there was like in the Niner games, like if you watch Harrison run those routes, he's running great routes. Kyler's just like, I'm gonna take off. Like screw this. Yeah. Like he's just bailing out when he didn't have to. And I don't know. If I'm Marvin Harrison Jr., if this happens another year, like if I have this kind of season with Kyler again next year, I'm like, trade me. Like, get me out of here. Like, I'm pulling Randy Moss. Get me out of here.
I mean, that's Kyler Murray, right? He's not like, 3-step drop, 1, 2, 3, release the ball kind of thing, or, timing routes, all that stuff. He can do all that, but it's not his game. His game is, again, create, improvise, do the thing. So it takes some time to get used to, and that's why. And I think with any other running quarterback, your stats are going to suffer as a receiver because maybe 5 to 7, maybe 10 passing plays a game, he's going to take off. So that's 10 opportunities for you to catch the ball. So I wasn't worried about his stats. He made some incredible plays. There was times where he just looked downright, like the best receiver in the league with some of the toe taps and stuff that his dad was known for. So I wouldn't be worried at all. And the team in general, 12th in offense, 15th in defense. So they were feisty. They just weren't quite good enough to beat some of the better teams. And that's kind of what we expected. All right, your boys, the San Francisco 49ers, going into the season, 11.5 was their projected win total. You went under, I went over, so you were right. I don't think you knew you were gonna be this right about the team. What did you see in the preseason that made you go under?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it when we were doing the previews. I was just like, it's just a weird vibe coming out of the preseason, right? It was like Ayuk's holding out. We don't know. Like we had no clue about Christian McCaffrey and his injury, right? They were just like, oh, he's gonna miss week 1, right? And then it turns out, oh damn, he missed like 10 weeks, right? It was just, I don't know, just a lot of weird things, and I don't know, like there's like the Super Bowl hangover, but I mean, there's always some sort of regression after losing the Super Bowl. There were just a lot of injuries, a lot of weird things, like. They couldn't make, like, their defense just looked off for the first few weeks, and then the offense looked terrible for, like, 7-8 games, and then they looked good for 1 game. Like, I don't know, just a really weird season, a lot of injuries, and a lot of weird things just happened, right? Like, they also had some, like, some of their players lost their children, things like that. Just a really bad season for them, and really bad things happening to them. No one could have predicted it this bad. Like, I was like, oh, Khaled, this will be under, but I think they might win the division. Like, I was like, I think they could probably win the division still. But... yeah, it was just a bad season. bad year. Hopefully they just forget this and move on next year.
Yeah, I don't want to like victory lap on an injury because that's no fun. But on CMC, I knew it was more serious than they let on. It just didn't smell right. So my prediction was they're going to keep pushing it, and then he's going to come back and get hurt again, which was exactly what happened. And if you remember, I think it was week 3, something like that. A friend of mine saw him at the SFO airport boarding a flight to Germany, to Munich.
And he looked pissed in that picture. He looked super pissed off in that picture. He's like,
wouldn't you?
Why you taking a picture? Yeah,
some random dude is taking a picture of you at the airport. He could have worked a little harder to cover himself, like put some shades on, face the window, don't make it so obvious. But yeah, and once that happened, I was like, oh, he's going to get the Kobe treatment. He's going to get some stem cells put in that knee or Achilles or whatever it was. So it just, from that perspective, I mean, you were right. I thought they still had enough talent to push through. But of course, none of us could have predicted the disaster and everything that went wrong. Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, on and off the field. Like the only thing you were missing was like a player getting arrested for some horrible crime.
I'm sure that's happening in the offseason as we speak.
Before we move on to the last division in the NFC, Brock Purdy, is he getting $60 million a year?
God, I hope not. I think 60 million is an overpay for him. At this point, I think he's Kirk Cousins-ish, like good player, can play well in a good offensive system with some good players around him. I don't think he's a game changer. So, but I mean, if that's what the quarterback market is dictating, like, hey, you got to make 50, 60, and you're gonna have to do it because what options do you have, right? Like, it's not like you're gonna find another like above average quarterback in the draft in the 7th round or any of these rounds. So you gotta pay what you know, right? And if you gotta pay him 60, I guess you gotta do it, and hopefully the cap keeps growing. But ideally you paying him closer to like 40, 45, right? Like I think that's it, in order to keep your roster construction, keep going. But if you gotta pay him 60, you gotta pay him 60, right? You gotta keep that guy around because he's shown enough that he's talented enough to play in your offense, and he can help you get to a Super Bowl. He's gotten you to a Super Bowl once. See what he can do it again.
They paid Jimmy G. They regretted it, but they paid him. So
I mean, I think everyone who's paid Jimmy G's regretted it, right? So
yeah, I'm got my Raiders hat on. I can't talk. I'm in the glass house too. Can't throw stones.